as we have been walking through our Exodus experience, we've covered the Ten Commandments of what God has given the Ten Commandments. Now we're at the moral laws. And I remember in the last couple of weeks, we talked about the Hebrew servants, the slave, and how people always wanted to use this as a means to justify slavery. But as we saw, God did never mean to justify it. After 6 years, you were set free. And a lot of the times you were turned over into slavery because of your own doing or your own choice. But now, as we walk through just Exodus 22, we talked about the protection of property, what happens with property and all of that and everything that goes with it. And after I left on last week, I thought about it on the way home. I don't know why. I think about stuff, Brother McChapel, on the way home. I should have said that. But just think about it. When we look at what God is laying out for the Israelites, and when we think about property, returning somebody's property, if you did something wrong, you are responsible for the people's property. If you deal some to their animals or something, you responsible for that. And on the way home, as I drove and just looked at all the fields we have, and some places, if you going back toward Bainbridge on that back road, you see a lot of cows now, especially on 285. And I know this is, and I just thought about it. I was like, wow, what if somebody now took one of them cows, killed the cow, stole the cow? They wouldn't even be held responsible. Mm-hmm. But guess what? Just because you're not held responsible by man's law, because you got away with it, God's law is still prevalent. So and I thought about it. I was like, a lot of this stuff we do as Christian folk, we think we get away with stuff. We try to deceive all these people. And truthfully, we should know that we can't deceive God. And because, just like the children of Israel, we are God's people. Because when we came up here and said that I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and Jesus Christ, his only begotten Son, when we said all of that, we became his people. We became in the household of the faithful. We're really, as I look at it, and as I preached on Sunday morning, when we talked about Peter and the dream he had and allowing the Gentiles to come into the household of the faithful, we are like the Gentiles. The gospel was always the gospel was intended for the Jews first, but because the Jews didn't want to listen, it was extended to the Gentiles. So we're like the Gentiles, so we're accepted in the household of the faithful. So now we're held to a higher standard, whether we want to believe it or not. And you know how we've always said growing up, and maybe this is just me, that the pastor was always held to a higher standard. Well, guess what? You got the pastor right here, and the members are. Because when you look at the pulpit ain't that much higher than where you are. And watch this. If you notice, most churches, when you go into the churches are sitting what? Off the ground, because you got to walk up what? Right? And there are some churches that sit ground level, but 90% of the churches I've been in, and that I could think of right now, are sitting what? So guess what? When you coming in, you're elevated too. So you're held to a higher standard to those that are in the world. So when we look at this stuff, God is telling his people that you're held to a higher standard. Now, granted, he already knew they weren't going to keep all these laws. He already knew it, but he had to put some in place for us to abide by. Because if there's no rules, there's no order. And of course, if there's no order, there's chaos. Because even in today's society, when we look at it, there are rules right now, but there's a bunch of what? Chaos. And order is just about thrown out the door when it comes to just the church itself. Because think about it. When we look at the AME Church, and I'm going to get to this, y'all bear with me. When we look at the AME Church, the AME Church is designed from top to bottom to succeed. If we follow the doctrine and discipline of the AME Church, if we follow the class leader system the way it is, and we follow the doctrine and discipline as well as adhere to the Bible, there is no way churches, the AME Church should fail. And truthfully, the AME Church is not failing. It's the people that's in the AME Church that's causing the problems, but the AME Church is designed to succeed. Because think about it, the class leader system. When we look at the class leader system, when you look at it, they say class leaders should call their members at least once a week. Well, actually, it says class leaders should be having meetings with their class, prayer meetings. And that's where all the questions and all of that and all the issues are even settled before it even gets to the pastor. Then, if you're calling your members twice a week, or twice, if they miss, you're not asking for money all the time. Because what's the thing they always say? The only time they hear from the church is when what? They want money. But if we're doing what we're supposed to do, and they still say it because they're going to say it anyway, but we're doing what we're supposed to do. McChapel is a living example of that throughout the pandemic. And even now, the class leaders are doing what they're supposed to do. So when we look at the AME Church, the way it's designed, it's supposed to succeed. And if you were on the prayer line on Monday, and I was on, I was attending two different meetings. That's why I didn't say too much. But Brother RJ made a statement that when he went to Valdosta and walked into the AME Church, they accepted him. But not only did they accept him, what he really hadn't said was it made him feel at home, because guess what? The same thing we've done here, they're doing there. That's the method of the AME Church. And because of that, they welcomed him in. Open it, didn't look at him wrong, then welcome him in. That's what the AME Church is about. We could go anywhere in the world and be able to feel at home in the AME Church. Because why? That's our sister or brother church. That's family. And it warmed my heart when I didn't say nothing, like I said, because I was running around doing some at another meeting. But getting back to this is because our forefathers, Richard Allen, believed in not only the Bible, believed in who he was serving, he also believed in order and discipline. So because of that, we have our doctrine and discipline. And if anybody has been had the chance, and I never really talk about it, but if you're in the Masonic order, did any of that, you will notice the doctrine and discipline falls in line with a lot of the Masonic stuff, because Richard Allen was a Mason before he started the AME Church and the Free African Society. So we see all of that, and then it goes back to here because God put in laws. Granted, we don't follow all of them, but he put it in. So when we get to our lesson tonight, we're at a point where the first part of this conversation is rarely talked about. When we look at it, if a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her, scroll down some, Sister Linda, because my tablet is not logged in, to him, he must still pay the bride's price for virgins. When we look at this, I've heard some people in conversations. Well, let me back up. One of the things that people don't want to talk about in the church is sex. Let's be honest. That's one of the things people don't want to talk about. But if truth be told, everybody's been here. Everybody got here because of that act. Whether it was premarital, whether it was marital, whether it was planned, whether it was unplanned, we got here because of it. The only person that didn't get here because of it was Jesus, Adam and Eve. They were three people. All right. So we got to realize that it's something that we really need to start back having conversations with our young folk about. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to start having conversations about. And this thing is getting on my nerves. So that I'm putting in the password if I'm wrong. Yes, I do think we're living in a time that we're trying to be politically correct, but also I believe we're living in a time that pastors don't want to take on tough scriptures, not because they can't, it's because they don't do the due diligence to do it. So a lot of the times, us as preachers and pastors, we preach from scriptures, we preach from books of the Bible that we're comfortable with. That's why, and I have to go back and think about it. A lot of preachers and pastors don't preach Revelation. It's a hard book to deal with. A lot of preachers and pastors, we quote Malachi, well, a man robbed God, but we don't preach Malachi. We'll quote the Songs of Solomon, but we won't preach from the Songs of Solomon because the Rose of Sharon comes from Songs of Solomon, but we'll quote it, but we skip over stuff. And I don't know if y'all noticed this year, a lot of the stuff I've been preaching has not been in series, but it's been in series. It's been kind of, we started, I think, with Matthew, then we started with Genesis, and we've kind of typed in the Old Testament, now we're in the New Testament. And because I'm using a lectionary and it's making me tackle different stuff. Even with Exodus, you remember when a couple of weeks ago we talked about I wasn't going to teach Exodus 21 and 22 because of some of the stuff, that some of the laws and all of that, but me being true to the Lord and having Him be my guide along this journey, that's what I've been doing. And one thing I've noticed about doing that is we've gotten stronger. I've noticed we've tackled some topics that we won't normally deal with. And I know I won't deal with, so we just happen to be on this about premarital sex right now. So sometimes we got to be willing to get dirty and even tackle stuff that me or you or anybody else may not fully understand, but have conversations about it. Because if we don't, we are still lost. We're still not preaching the entire gospel because there are things that Jesus had to deal with that he probably didn't want to deal with, but when it came up, he dealt with it. Does that answer? So I finally got my book back up now. So when we look at this, the first thing we're dealing with now, he's dealt with property. He's dealt with slavery. He's kind of dealt with how we should treat one another. Now he's dealing with moral and ceremonial. He's dealing with moral laws and ceremonial laws right now. And as it says up here, social responsibility. And when we look at it, do you think, yeah, and this just, I need y'all help to answer this one. When we look at that social responsibility, I think we've changed social responsibility into social media. And we allow social media to be the responsible entity for raising the people that we're supposed to raise. We've allowed social media to be responsible for a lot of the stuff that is going on in the church and in our lives. Because it's easier to blame social media than it is to take responsibility. These kids are going all crazy, Sister Diane. They got social media and doing all of this and doing all of that. Well, who bought the phone? Right? Who bought the phone? They needed the phone call so I could get in touch with them. Okay, yeah, right. But you realize if you really wanted to, you could cut the internet access off and still have it where they can have the phone. But I've noticed we've allowed social media to be the responsible entity because how many times have you seen somebody doing something and their child is over there occupied on social media? Then what we do, we'll make it seem like that we're so proud. Oh, they could get on, they're 2 years old and could get on YouTube by themselves and this or that. Well, guess what? Your child is just outsmarted you because if they could get on YouTube, they probably know when to turn off what they want to turn off and watch what they want to watch when you're around. Because just think about it. Just think about it. Not me, Brother Rivers, not me and Brother Rivers, we ain't that old. But at some time, you had a Rudy Ray Moore. You had a Richard Pryor. You had a Red Fox. And you knowing you ain't supposed to listen to any of them tapes or records. There were records back then. I was gonna say 8 tracks, but I don't think Rudy Ray Moore had 8 tracks. I think he had a 45. That's what I heard, Sister Diane. I ain't that old. I'm gonna put it out. Somebody supposedly. Oh. But guess what? Didn't you listen to it? And it wasn't yours that it was. It was whose? Mama's or dad's. But when they went home, what did you do? So all it is history is repeating itself, but it's repeating itself in a different way. But guess what? When Mom and Daddy found out we were listening to it, they didn't wait. They dealt with us right then and there. Now, granted, we tried to get smart and figure out how to do it without allowing them to know no more. But it's the same thing now. So when we look at this social responsibility has always been there. Matter of fact, that word social has always been there. Because God was giving them moral and social responsibility laws. And the first thing that he dealt with during this section is the treatment of women during that time. Because we got to think about it. Women during this time didn't have the rights and benefits that women do now. And because of that, God was putting stuff in place showing that there are certain ways you should treat a woman. And truthfully, there's ways you should treat women now. And the first thing he says right here, if a man, and I want to say that, and it says seduces right here where we're reading it. One of the new Revised Standard Version says entice a virgin. There's a price to pay. If a man entices a virgin who is not theirs, who has not been pledged to be married and sleep with her, he must pay the bride's price, and she shall be his wife. Some people took this, Sister Diana, watch this, how us folk do. That didn't say nothing about not having premarital sex. That just said if the woman was a virgin, I had to pay for it. But watch this. It said entice. It says entice, and I wish in today's time we could reverse that because some women entice men. Let's not be twisted about it. And truthfully, some of the women back then probably was enticing the man, but The thing was, what this is saying is, you can't speak sweet nothings to this woman to make her give up her virginity. Because if you did, that was your wife. You remember them old shotgun weddings that you used to see on TV and all of that? You can entice. You can speak sweet nothings to somebody to get them to do something that you knew was morally wrong. And I thought about me again, Sister Sims. What if that would have happened when I was in middle and high school, and if I'd have read that and all of that, and mom and dad said, you mess with this person, you met with that person, you were going to marry them. Might not have did some of the crazy stuff I did, Sister Diane. Because you know this conversation, I'm just being real. I ain't, you know, if you love me, you'll go ahead and do it. Now, sometimes that was the woman telling the man, or the man telling the woman, but enticing. Enticing, and we use that word love so loosely. We'll throw that word love out there so quick. If you love me, you will do it. What's love got to do with it? All right? We throw it out there because we're trying to entice somebody. We're trying to entice them. And during this time, if you entice them, there was a price to pay. I debated if I was going to say this, and y'all know y'all pastor, so I'm just going to say it. And I'm not pointing anybody or saying anything, but think about, I'm just going to say it. Think about some of the sexual encounters that you've had. Don't be smiling and all of that. Don't start reminiscing. I told you I should have said it. But if you had to marry or pay a price for some of the people or some of the things you've laid down with, I don't need to say no more. All right? Just think about it. I mean, I know some people say, well, Lord, Jesus said he didn't come to condemn the law. He came to fulfill it, right? But just think about it. We're in Old Testament time right now, right? If you entice somebody, you had to pay the price for enticing them, where will you be at right now? Which means, because I'm bringing this up to new times, because y'all know how I try to bring it up to new time, that entice, we shouldn't try to entice or seduce anybody to do anything, because it's still a price we have to pay. There's still a price we have to pay. Yes, I understand we've been redeemed. We've been bought with a price. But even when we were bought with a price, Jesus didn't come and seduce or entice anybody. He allowed them to make their own decision. He came and told them who he was. He came and did what the Father allowed him to do. And every now and then, we got to realize we got to do what our Lord and Savior allows us to do. Because some things he just would not allow us to do. And y'all notice I've been quoting this for about the last 2 weeks. There are some places I can't go, some things I may not know. Because we got to realize that there are some places we want to go, we just can't go. And the reason why we can't go is not like we ain't got in our car and tried to go. Right? It ain't like we tried not to. It's just every time we tried to go, we could not. We could not. And I'm going to use this as an example. I started back working out. The last couple of weeks I hadn't, because Sister Linda won't let me go because I ain't go to the doctor and check on my hip. So, but we've been meal prepping. I hadn't meal prepped in a couple of weeks. So the other day I said, you know what? I'm going to go by Wendy's and get me some meat. I ain't had a burger in so long. Because normally if I eat fast food, it's chicken. I'm going to go get me a burger. Sister Diane, I went by the first Wendy's. It was packed. I said, well, I ain't stopping there. I ain't got time. So I went by another one, knowing I'm supposed to be my butt back at work. I went by another one, and guess what? It was packed. And it wasn't even lunchtime. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I wanted to, but the Lord wouldn't allow me. He stepped in, right? So some things he delivers us from, but some things he just has to put in place to keep us from doing stuff. Because Lord knows every now and then we're enticed by that chocolate. We're enticed by that 2-for-1. We're enticed by that big box that says $5 or $6. We're enticed by it. We're enticed, but every now and then, and I use Brother McKay if you don't mind. Brother, everybody know Brother McKay loves what to go at on Sundays. All right. But there are some times that Brother McKay want to go, right? And has plans to go and just can't make it there. Right? It's not that he couldn't. The Lord just didn't allow him to go at that particular time. So getting back to this, if that man enticed that woman, he had to pay the bride's price. So even if he didn't marry her, right, he still was responsible for taking care of her the rest of her life. So let's throw that back out there again. Imagine if you had to take care of some people the rest of not your kids. So some people don't even do that. But if you had to take care of some people for the rest of your life, of their life. So let's put this in another way. Church wise, people wise, not sexual wise. But if you have enticed or seduced or even entrapped people to not think they should come to your church, if you have enticed, seduced, or trapped people not to believe in God because of your actions, because of your ill will, and let's just pray because of conversations you've had, because sometimes you got to realize when we start to talk about things that happen in the church, people are listening. And we've just seductively told them not to come to the church. So if you were responsible for the souls that was lost that you've come in contact with, I don't think none of us will be able to make it into heaven. So move, and y'all stop me at any time. But it goes on to say here, if the father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay. So even if the father said no, you must still pay. You must still pay. So you can even get out of it. You can even get out of it. Then we go on to verse 18. Do not allow sorcerers to live. Now somebody say that's harsh. You didn't even want to allow sorcerers to live, but we got to realize the time that was, what was going on through this time. Children of Israel, we already know how easily influenced the children of Israel are. We already know from even when Moses was trying to free them, and Pharaoh called them in and tried to be buddy with them. And they turned on Moses, the person that was trying to free them, the person that they was praying to God for. So we see how easily influenced they are. But also what we got to keep in mind when God is talking about these sorcerers, they got this from Egypt. They got this practice from Egypt. So why even bring something past the Red Sea that should have been left over there to here? Why even bring something that you've seen I've destroyed? Why even enticing something that you've seen I destroyed? So if you want to do it, you should not even live. You should not live in. I kind of like what this says right here. Among the ancients, the practice of sorcery had two associations. First, contact with dark and demonic powers or persons. Second, altered states through drugs and potions. There was understood to be a connection between drug taking and hallucination or cultic practices. So in order to even contact on your Ouija board, because let's just be, I'm going to throw this out there. Because a lot of the times when people talked about the Ouija boards and all of that, it wasn't just the Ouija boards. You had to be on something to sit there and think about pulling that way. Maybe it's just me again, I'm sorry. To even pull that board out, because let's think about it. You know we weren't in our right mind. But because they even talk about trying to raise something from the dead. Because we knew without a shadow of a doubt, time we heard a knock, time we seen some brush against us, we were gone. We were going to tell everything in that house to try to get out. But even during this time, this is what they did. And God was saying they shouldn't even live amongst you, because if you have somebody that's trying to bring up dark spirits, if you have somebody that's trying to do demonic stuff in your midst, I can't be in there. I can't be in there. Let's bring this to the church. We have some demonic spirits that try to come in the church, and they come on the back of our people. But because I started to realize when God asked the devil, what have you been doing, Satan? And it didn't dawn on me. Satan said what? I've been walking to and fro. You notice Satan didn't never say I've been going in people's houses. Satan didn't never say I was going into churches. Satan said I was walking to and fro, up and down, finding people. So once he found them, he didn't have to go in. They went in for him because he was just walking to and fro. So why would I allow demonic spirits to come in my midst to mess up what I am trying to do? To mess up my peace. Because we got to realize the demonic spirits are just like the CIA, just like spies. They're waiting. And I do it this way. They're just like a sniper. A sniper will wait for days, weeks, and months to get that perfect shot. Won't eat, won't sleep, will use the bathroom on themselves to get that perfect shot. Then if they think they're compromised and it's some manure or something around them, they don't mind smelling like the manure to get that shot. That's what the demonic spirits will do. They will wait and wait and wait to that perfect opportunity. And time that opportunity comes, that's when they pull the trigger. That's when that wolf attacks. But because they got to be able to assess the situation. I was looking at something, and they talked about the, and I think it was the wolf itself. This guy said he had a problem with wolves and all of that, and he noticed one day the wolf didn't come and get his dog right away. He said he came out and looked on the camera, and the dog and the wolf was playing. And every day, the wolf would draw the dog further away. It kept drawing him further away from the house. And it got to the point that the dog was too far away, and that's when the wolf attacked. That's all. That when we talk about that wolf in sheep clothing, the wolf is just trying to draw that sheep a little further away, a little further away, because he's trying to put a spell, and that's what sorcerers did, put spells on further away till it gets to the point to where, guess what? You so far away that you're away from the ark of the safety. You out of the hedge of protection. So now that you're out of the hedge of protection, I can attack you. And now that I attack you, and let's think about it. When you looked at them old movies, the werewolves and all of that, one of my favorite movies is Werewolf in London. And you know, that was just, and one of the first things they told them when they were in that bar, make sure you don't go off the path. And what did they do? They sitting there having a good time, having a conversation, and looked down, and they were off the path. And all that werewolf did is attack one and turn that one into a werewolf. That's all the devil wants to do is attack one. And if I could turn that one, I could turn another one. And if I'm doing it in the church, right, I could take a church and infiltrate that church And now I've infiltrated the community. Because now people are not going to want to come into the church because they don't know who's saved, who's saint from sinner. Because they're acting more foolish than the ones outside. I'm getting upset. So when we talked about do not allow sorcerers to live, God was saying do not allow these demonic spirits to be in. And if we go back to Richard Allen, do we realize if you look at the doctrine and discipline and look at it, a pastor has the authority to expel a member from the church. It doesn't even have, now granted, you can go to the elder, you go for the bishop, but the pastor, he doesn't have to go to the bishop and say, look, this member, no. He could go to Stewart Pro Tem and go before the official board, and that's it. Because we got to realize we don't want something in our church or even in our house or even in our job that's disrupting the peace and harmony that we have. Because if you got to deal with dysfunction all the time, how can you grow? If you got to deal with evil spirits and all of that, which, yes, they come up. There's no doubt that they're going to come up. There's going to be stuff that happens that you got to deal with. But if you're dealing with it every Sunday, if you're dealing with it every Monday, if you're dealing with it every Wednesday, how can you grow? And the problem with a lot of our churches and our community, we can't grow because we're dealing with dysfunction, and we can't get a functional relationship, a functional drive, something functional to move, and because it can't move, we're going backwards. And I use this as an example. A lot of people have cars or have stuff that are dysfunctional. They're not functional. But if you keep on trying to work on that, and you don't have something functional in your life to get around, where are you at? You're still in the same spot. You're in the same spot. Eventually, you got to move on from that. But in the church, how can you move on when every time it comes in, it's there? God is saying, do not allow sorcerers to live. And not only that, many of the Israelites had no doubt learned, like I said, these customs from from Egypt. Let me throw this out there. Got to be careful when we get on this side of the fence to not to bring stuff from the other side back to this side. How many times have you went in mom and them house after they cleaned and what they said? You better not bring your dirty self in my house. You better leave them shoes where at the door. And some of us still do that. You can't wear your shoes in my house. You can't do it because I don't want you to bring something dirty back in. Now watch this. Yes, God said, come as you are. Mm-hmm. So when we come in, we're going to come in a little dirty. But once he cleans us up, right? Once he cleans us up and changes us, we shouldn't go back to where we used to be. Yes, he's not through with us yet. But I always use Paul on the Damascus Road because all of us had a Damascus Road experience. And because we've had a Damascus Road experience, when God shined that light, and Saul at the time fell off that donkey. And God said, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? From that day forward, Saul didn't go and kill a couple more Christians and say, God ain't through with me yet. He made a change right then and there. Now he still had some of his ways about him because God wasn't through with him. God wasn't really through with him yet. But there were some things that stopped immediately. He wasn't always clean no more, but he didn't allow the dirt that he used to have to get on him no more. If you've been somewhere, and I don't know, Brother Rivers, Brother Kelso, even Brother McKay, even some of us that went to some fishing holes and messed around and got in a little quicksand. It wasn't a deep quicksand, but it was some quicksand that kind of, I got into something, I ain't gonna say quicksand, might have got into something that we didn't want to get into. May have been poison ivy, may have been mud, may have been something. Guess what? We didn't go that way no more. We made sure that we didn't try to go that way no more. Because we didn't want to be back in that situation that we were in. But for the life of me, I can't understand how us as Christians always go back to some stuff we used to do. Then use the excuse, God knows my heart. Use the excuse, he ain't through with me yet. And if we completely continuing to say that, that means we're making an excuse for what we're doing. It's kind of like this right here. I don't mean to cause no disrespect. Then 90% of the stuff that you say out of our mouth is disrespectful. Because we already know what we're going to say. Right? I don't mean to get into other folk business. Right? And sometimes we don't. But I would say 75% of the time, the person that's saying that is ready to get into somebody. And they're trying to make sure you're on their side before they even go and mention to somebody else. So don't allow sorcerers to live. But this one right here, anyone who has sexual relationships with an animal is to be put to death. And I know what people be saying, well, why even this? Why even this? Well, once again, Egyptians and the Canaanites during that time had rituals of having sexual relations with animals. So God is saying, don't even do it. Don't even get into that practice, because now you're still getting into some ritualistic stuff that is not of God. I've made man and woman. So if you want to do right, just marry the person. Don't go out and do anything with animals. And it says right here, I want to repeat this right here. This offensive sex act apparently was prevalent among the Canaanites. It is surprising to some that it was illegal in some European nations itself, and I need to research that, because when this was written, I don't know if they was talking about past or even now. As Christian civilians and morally are increasing markedly and rejected, it is no surprise that all of these sexual practices are increasingly practiced, supported, and encouraged. So during that time, they were mocking Christians, but also trying to force us to do worldly things. And that's what I wanted to get us to realize with this right here. Jesus said, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. There are some things that the world will try to get you to do. But once again, because we are held to a higher standard, we should know not to do some worldly things. And let's just be true. Some of the things that we like to do is good for us. It feels good, but it doesn't necessarily be good for you. And that's the stuff that we really and truthfully got to ask the Lord to deliver us from. Because let's be honest, every now and then, no matter how much we shouldn't eat chocolate, no matter how we shouldn't eat, some stuff, right? Sister Linda told me I can't talk about sweet potato pies, and that's why I don't mention them no more. But as long as it's there, guess what? We know we shouldn't eat it. We're gonna eat it. And Lord knows if we're fixing our own food, we know we shouldn't be adding that much sugar to some of the stuff we eat. But guess what? We do it. We do it because it tastes good. It makes it just right. But just because it's just right doesn't mean it is right. It ain't right for you. Right? So some of this stuff that is morally feels right to other people because of who we are, we shouldn't partake in it. So God is saying that this stuff that's happening because we got to think about it. If it wasn't never happening, would he have had to make a law for it? If it was never going to happen, he wouldn't have had to say anything about it. But it happened. It happened. So not only that, he said, whoever sacrifices to um, any other god other than the Lord must be destroyed. Now remember, thou should not put no other gods before me. Now he's saying, when you do it, or when you sacrifice to another god, you must be destroyed. Watch this. You realize we hadn't got to the point in Exodus where Moses was back up on the mountain. But by the time he came down, it was a golden calf. We're realizing now, God said, before he even got to that point, whoever sacrifices to any other God other than the Lord must be destroyed. So let's look at this. Because when we think about it, thou should not put no other gods before me. Some of us worship money. Some people worship clothes. Some people worship their cars. Some people worship their significant other. Some people just worship their own self. Can't walk by the mirror without just stopping and looking for 20 minutes at your own self. Be late because you're in the mirror flexing and doing everything, right? Having a good time with yourself, right? Imagine if we were destroyed because of our love for money. Imagine if we were destroyed when we knew we should get up to go to church, but we made an excuse that we had to do something else. If he destroyed us. Thank God for Jesus. Right, right. So good point. We're still destroyed spiritually. We're still destroying ourselves spiritually. And the thing is, the thing is, I want us to realize when I say thank God for Jesus, is because even though this world in our flesh is weak, and we're being destroyed every day, right? We're being destroyed, we're being persecuted, we're being picked out to be picked on. We have a lot of stuff that we face every day, and Lord knows, man, that's what God said, even in my eyesight, even in his eyesight, we're just filthy rags. Because he realized God searched man's heart and everything that he saw in it. That's why I got to be careful when he said God knows my heart. Because he knows what's in it. Right? He knows what's in it. And if we think we got pure hearts, if you want to test that theory out, walk by somebody that you know that don't like you and you don't like them. Right. Mm-hmm. It's in there. It's amazing at how we hadn't seen somebody in a while and we forgot what they did to us. Ain't even thought about it until guess what? And they don't even talk to us. And this is the thing with the devil, right? Or with, and I don't, y'all know I don't like giving the devil that much credit. But this is the thing. They'll walk by, won't say nothing. They have the audacity to smile and wave. Why in the you know what? This person waving at me knowing. Right. And watch this. Guess what happened here? And that's what no. Mhm. That's why this is so important. Yeah. I think everybody knows our Father which art in heaven, holy be thy name. Thy kingdom come, that shall be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive our trespasses, and we forgive those who trespass against us. You know, some say, forgive our debt, and we forgive our debtors. In other words, forgive those that I have wronged, and forgive those that have wronged me. Because I can't do it by myself. Because I forgot I didn't even like that person until I saw that person again. Okay? I didn't even realize it until that person drove. And watch this. Sometimes, Sister Diane, they don't even see it. We just see them drive by. We just, it look like they car. Why they on my street? They supposed to stay way over there. Mm-hmm. And, and it comes back, so we are destroyed all the time. And a lot of times we destroy our own self. And we be in a state because we're destroying our own self. We be in a state of destruction. And when we're in a state of destruction, we're trying to destroy any and everything that we come in contact with. And a lot of times we don't even mean to. But our mind has put us in a state of war, so everything that comes up to me is an enemy. And when I say everything, even the loved ones and all of that, that's asking you how your day was, and you go off. Because you're in a state of war. But because in your mind, and the way our mind works is because everything is a threat. And because everything is a threat, my body and mind has to react before anything. Because do we realize our mind scans for threats all the time? How many times something has startled you and you've punched or did before you even reacted? I love that, Sister Lund. I got it to the point I could scale, do something, and be out the way just that quick. And the first thing she said, I about hit you. I know. Keyword about. I dodged another one. But because how your mind thinks. So a lot of us, we are in a spiritual warfare with our own self. We're fighting their own inner demons. We're our own sorcerer. We're fighting our own demons, and because we are not allowing ourselves to heal from the hurt, and we keep picking that scale, and we keep picking at it, keep going back to what has hurt us, and not asking the Lord, forgive. Give me the ability to forgive my trespasses. Give me the help, because we fight not against principalities of this world. A lot of us are dealing with some situations that are not of this world, and until we're willing to face them, until we're willing to do what we need to do, how can we move forward? How can you move forward in your relationship with God? If you constantly fighting yourself and everybody else, how can you move forward? How can you? Because you can't love yourself. And what this commandment said? Love thyself, love thy neighbor as I love thyself. And y'all remember a while back, I used to tell y'all I didn't want people to love me like they love themselves. But I realized what that scripture was saying. I was reading it wrong. It said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Not how some people can't do that because they don't know how to love themselves. So that means you got to pray for them too. I see we're actually, I just realized what time it was. So when we look at this, y'all bear with me for 1 minute. Do not mistreat, oppress, or foreigners, for you were foreigners in Egypt. That's 21. Do not take advantage of the widows or the fearless. If you do, and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. when we look at this, and I'm going to close with this, do not treat foreigners. And it goes on to say, if you do, I will hear their cry. I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives, you will become widows, and your children fatherless. It'll go on to say, because you were once foreigners too. I pointed this out. I want to close with this. God is saying, don't treat other people the way you were treated when you were in Israel. When you were in Egypt, because you were a foreigner once. You were slaves in another land. So why would you treat somebody else the way you was treated when you was praying for me to come deliver you? I say that to say this. We got to stop treating people as bad as we were treated. And I say it this way. All of us have grew up in the church. And we know how it was when the mothers of the church and all of this looked down on us, didn't allow us to say anything, didn't allow us to do anything. We know how it made us feel. Yeah, some people say, well, it made me strong, it made